Welcome back to part two of our interview with Kyle Fitzsimons. And in this segment, we're going to talk about his arrest and prosecution. So, Cal, when you first got to prison, so you went to the D.C. jail, and then they transferred you to where?
Well, the BOP transports human cargo, and that
BOP is
the Federal Bureau of Prisons.
okay.
BOP could also stand for backwards on purpose.
Is that the acronym it's become famous for?
That is the acronym of choice for inmates within that federal system. Yes.
Okay.
I was taken by bus from D.C. to the Philadelphia Detention Center, which was wonderful because it actually put me in the same town as my legal counsel for a last touch before heading off to prison. From the detention center in Philadelphia, I went to the BOP compound in Petersburg, Virginia. From Petersburg, I went to Atlanta. From Atlanta to Tallahassee, and then finally arriving at the Coleman Low compound in late September of 2023.
What was it like in prison? I don't, in my mind, I have an idea of what it probably is like, but I've never been there. So did you have an idea, and what did it meet your understanding of what you thought prison was going to be?
Prison, honestly, and this is from the mouth of a guard there, prison is just a few bad decisions away. And that could be anyone. And I hope you never, ever have to have the experience of going there, Mr. Jeffrey, because it's not a place where normalcy reigns. It's a place where you are basically put in a survival mode. And thankfully, at least at the low compound, that has been relaxed to a point. I can tell you that when I arrived at the compound at the low in Florida, and I was no longer behind a locked door, had access to a barbershop, religious services, could exercise on a rec yard with grass, have the opportunity for programming and to engage in hobbies like at the leather shop. Absolutely, it was a game changer for doing the time. And I'd say that's the big difference between jail and prison. Jail is meant to be uncomfortable to speed you through your trial. Prison is intended more for those who have time to spend it in the best way that they can.
So is it a matter of the people that you end up hanging out with in prison? Or does that affect the quality of life in prison? Or
Well, I'd say one thing that's impacting the Federal Bureau of Prisons right now is that there's an overabundance of foreign nationals that are in the BOP system at present. And I'm thinking with Trump back in office that situation might be mitigated. There is a bit of an overcrowding, overrepresentation from gentlemen from South America, from Latin countries. And I'd say that in the past, those individuals were detained by ICE or placed in facilities that were run by private prisons. In this Biden administration, they were housed within the BOP, which can lead to a little bit of overcrowding.
so what was a typical day like in the prison?
Typical day in the prison typically starts with a call for chow. They have lights on at 6 a.m. Chow is typically called about 6:30. Your first move, where you're allowed movement on the compound to engage in education or recreation, is about 7:30. If you have a job, a prison job, that's when you make the move to your job. There's a recall to your unit at 10 a.m. and you then are dispatched by unit to chow for lunch. Noon, another move, back to work, back to recreation, back to education programming. And there's hourly moves after that until 4 p.m. 4 p.m. there's another recall, a stand-up count where the guards make tally of all the inmates in their custody. Again, chow, and again another recreation move or education move into the evening. Recall for the evening is typically around 7 or 8 o'clock at night. Then there's the stand-up count at 10 p.m. Again, a tally, and then lights out.
Was it a hard adjustment, being in prison?
From freedom? Absolutely. It's something that if you really relish direction, your own direction, well, you're going to have to get used to that. It was an adjustment, but one that I think that the conditions and time in jail had prepared me for.
So now you had a chance though. You met some people in prison, and what was that like? The fellow prisoners that you met, were they nice people, bad people? Were they sympathetic with what happened on January 6th?
So that's an interesting question, and one that deserves a really interesting response. I'd say that to a man, everyone I encountered in the BOP was curious. In their own cases, in their own interactions with the law, they had had the media spin them. They had had prosecutors hang them. They had had judges sentence them, just like us. But maybe not to the extent of the massive national spectacle that we had been. So everybody was, at least at a minimum, curious. They wanted to hear it out of our mouths exactly what we had seen, what that day was about. And the second thing I'd say about that is that there was respect. When you stand up for something like we did, they understand that. They can respect that. And I can say a person like me that took it all the way to trial, never took a plea, never flipped, never talked, that's an altogether new kind of respect.
So you went in with street cred.
I
To use a street term.
Unfortunately, that infamous image of me snarling with a head wound, that was enough street cred for many. That picture had been national news for quite some time, and when people learned that that was me, there was an instant, oh, you're that guy.
So you didn't have a lot of problems as far as defending yourself.
No, I had not a lot of problems at all. I was actually blessed that my time went the way it did.
Did you have any contact with people on the outside?
Absolutely, and I'd say that one of the first and most lasting contacts I've had with the outside was in the support from letter writers. I received letters from all over the country urging me to persevere, to make it, offering me their love. And that is something that buoyed me throughout my time inside. There was an outfit, the Patriot Mail Project, which got our addresses out early on when we were in D.C. And I've maintained correspondences with many of these Americans from across the country throughout my entire time inside. And I owe them a great deal of thanks.
Were you shocked?
At that outpouring of support?
Correct.
Yes. Yes, I was. I had been turned into a monster. I had lost everything, and I thought that's how it would remain. I didn't think there was any coming back from this, that I'd be a pariah or, at a minimum, someone that no one would want to interact with in the future. And I was shown immense grace by having the support of those letter writers and those people on the outside. And eventually that support took the form of even more noticeable forms like the protest that became a nightly vigil outside the D.C. jail led by Mickey Whithoft, the mother of Ashley Babbitt. Mickey adopted us all as her children in our struggle through our trials. Mickey appeared at my trial, and she appeared every night on the corner outside the jail. And
She was arrested a couple of times, I think.
she
for
was.
that. For,
She was.
What, trespassing or something they said that she was?
Oh, inside.
doing?
I think even they went so far as to say that she assaulted somebody, or there was instigation of a riot. She really put herself on the line to draw awareness, to be an advocate for the men of January 6th. And she's a rock star.
So, Kyle, what exactly did you do that they charged you with that on that day that they said that you did that sent you to prison?
Let's see. There were so many. It was an indictment that kept being superseded the longer I was determined to fight it in court. One of the charges that I did get some relief from the highest court of the land, from the Supreme Court, was that the obstruction of an official proceeding, which I was charged with and convicted of, was rolled back.
Now, that was a federal offense.
That is correct.
Correct. So now that there was a Supreme Court ruling last summer that was unconstitutional, and that many of the J6ers were being leveraged with that and forced to then capitulate to lesser crimes as a result of trying to avoid a more harsh prison time. Is that correct?
Oh, that is absolutely correct. In order to avoid that heavy felony, many would take a plea for the lesser charges. And the thing with taking an appeal of that charge, if you had been convicted or taken a plea for it, is that even if you had the relief from the Supreme Court, it would still be months before your case would roll through the district for either resentencing or to have other charges that you were appealing heard.
So before we get to that, let's ask, so when did you know that you were in trouble?
Did I know I was in trouble?
Yes.
I'd say the 7th. And with how terribly the event was being told about in the media. I was listening to the radio in my truck driving back to Maine, where I was living, and I was in disbelief at the words that were being used to describe the event.
When was the first time that law enforcement contacted you?
Well, let me tell you about this.
Okay.
When I came back on the 7th, there was a town council meeting in my town, which I called into. I relayed what I had seen, and that volunteering of information then led to a newspaper interview, which was published later on that month in January. I was arrested in February 4th of 2021, and I have to say there's some real horror stories in the arrests of some of the defendants from January 6th. SWAT teams, homes being bulldozed, children being held at gunpoint. I have to say that my arrest was very constitutional and was carried out by local sheriffs.
Is that because it was in Maine?
I want to say it's because it was in Maine, because Maine is a great state.
And so what happened the day that they came to advise you of the fact that you were under arrest?
They came to my door, and I initially turned them away. But when I called...
No, who came to your door? Was it the
sheriffs,
FBI or the
sheriffs?
Okay, the
Sheriffs came. I initially turned them away and then called the local sheriff's department asking why sheriff's deputies were at my door. And they advised me that there was a warrant for my arrest and if I could please allow myself to be taken into custody, which I complied with. So
what did you think when they said there was a warrant for your arrest?
I had seen the arrest spiraling out of D.C. I I knew that there was a strong possibility with my newspaper article, with talking to the town council, that there would be some repercussions. But I was still under the impression that something could be done about the narrative, something could be done about my charges. I certainly didn't think that I'd be spending so much time or denied bond. I thought I could fight the case.
So from the time that the sheriff deputies came to your house, they took you to jail. What happened from that point?
From the Cumberland County Jail in Maine, I was sent to a detention facility in Rhode Island. This is all in the transit from Maine to Washington, D.C., where I would be arraigned. And from the Wyatt Detention Facility in Rhode Island, I was then driven to Stewart Airfield in Newburgh, New York, where I was flown to Oklahoma, stayed at Grady County.
Oklahoma?
Oklahoma.
Okay, that's my home state. Now that's the state right there. I want you to know, Kyle.
Well, Oklahoma.
I'm sure you enjoyed that part of it, right?
The one thing I did notice about Oklahoma is that looking out the window, it was very flat.
It is flat.
Oklahoma is also a hub for the federal system. It is a place where inmates from all over the country are brought in to be moved around to other facilities. There's nothing in common with someone who's been in the system to go through Oklahoma at some point in their bid.
So this took you how long from the time that they arrested you to get to D.C.?
I'd say I was in transit for about a month and a week.
A month and a week?
Yes, that's right.
Had you appeared before a judge or anyone?
No, I had not.
Had you been charged?
I had been charged, and while I was in transit, a grand jury indictment had been handed back.
And the indictment said?
Well, I can say that my indictment didn't start with as many charges as I ended up with at the end.
So they were pared down?
More like they were beefed up.
Really?
Yes, sir.
So the indictment said what?
The indictment alleged trespass, assaults on officers, and the obstruction of an official proceeding.
So did you plead down from the obstruction of an official proceeding?
No, I took no plea. I went to trial. And it was 2.5 years in the D.C. jail fighting that case.
So you're in the D.C. jail. How many court appearances did you have in the first 2 years that you were in the D.C. jail?
Well, that's the thing, is that the process can be lengthened by finding legal counsel. I myself had private counsel to start and swiftly ran out of money. Graciously, the judge that I had appointed a public defender for me, and the wonderful people out of the Philadelphia Public Defender's Office took on my case, and I was given Natasha Taylor Smith as counsel.
So what did she tell you? What was her advice to you as far as your plea is concerned?
She agreed it was something she had never seen before. It was
In what way?
In the way that there was no give, and that it looked like they really were looking to put the defendants from January 6th in the spotlight and make examples of them.
I think that I read somewhere that there was 100% prosecution. That's no one's ever seen that. I mean, 100%. I mean, every single person that they brought in actually was arrested and actually prosecuted for some offense. I mean, it was a pretty high rate.
Well, the DOJ, they typically don't bring a case unless they think they can convict. That's true. Their conviction rate is very high. It's very rare for you to win in a trial with the DOJ, and I think that folks understand that, and they negotiate plea deals as a result.
But you didn't negotiate that. Why?
I did not negotiate. I had a defense strategy which was going to focus on the security footage from the Capitol, police body cameras, the statements that were provided to the FBI, 302 forms, and the defense strategy of acting in defense of a third party.
So did your lawyer feel pretty confident based upon the facts that you were gonna beat this?
She was a rock star, and my trial, I think, was the first glimmer of hope for many who were fighting their trials that some victory could be achieved in the D.C. circuit.
So what happened? I mean, what victory was achieved as far as your prosecution was concerned that you were satisfied with?
Well, I was convicted of basically my entire indictment.
Mm-hmm.
The victory, I'd say, would be in that the police officer who was their star witness against me, the trial, that was his first and last time in his career taking the stand. My lawyer did a wonderful job in cross-examination and in poking as many holes as she could in the Department of Justice argument in furtherance of my conviction.
So how could he remember? I mean, was he able to remember? It was a chaotic day. How do you remember all of those different cases and what happened? Were they going by film evidence, or is that what it is? And how did they know?
Well, it is my belief that the January 6th was one of the most photographed events in human history. Nearly everyone on the ground had a cell phone rolling. There's extensive CCTV footage from the Capitol grounds, and then the body cameras that were worn on the chest of every police officer there. So there was a lot of video evidence to comb through, and I credit the investigative team at the Public Defender's Office in Philadelphia for doing a phenomenal job in finding all those needles within the haystack, that mountain of discovery that was handed to us almost laughingly. Good luck finding what you need to defend yourself at trial.
So based upon what you saw, would you term this a prosecution or would you term it a persecution?
I'm not going to lie and say I don't think that the January 6th defendants were railroaded. I definitely think that it was politically unpalatable for the judges to show us much leniency, to see it our way. No one got a change of venue. The D.C. juries themselves, that jury pool, they had been victims of the 6th themselves. They had sat through that next few months in D.C. under a military occupation. There was fences surrounding the Capitol. It was visible to them. There was no way that anyone who would be in a D.C. jury pool would not feel some certain kind of way about a defendant before them who was involved with January 6th.
So when you walked into the D.C. court, did you say, "I'm done, my goose is cooked"?
No, I didn't.
You still were optimistic?
It's not maybe so much optimistic, but I think that you have to have faith in the American process. It's what we're afforded as free men and in this country. I did have faith taking a bench trial that at least the judge would be schooled enough in the law to parse the evidence and see things, some things at least, my way. Our hope was to go in, maybe not coming out scot-free or not guilty. Our goal with the bench trial was to mitigate the aggravated assaults and come out with simple assaults.
Did it happen?
It did in one charge. It did in one charge. I was found not guilty of one aggravated assault, which was converted to a simple assault. And I do believe from the absolute presence, poise, and power of my defense by Natasha Taylor Smith, that had I gone with a jury, that I at minimum may have ended up with a hung jury. I think she did a fantastic job. And as evidenced with how great she is now a judge in Philadelphia. She
Wow.
won an election recently and is still part of the process of the courts in Philadelphia.
So how many years did you get?
I had a wonderful lawyer for sentencing, again, out of the Philadelphia Public Defenders, Jonathan McDonald, and the prosecution was seeking a 15-year term.
Isn't that unusual for what you were charged with?
Well, Mr. Jeffrey, I think gleefully the media like to say that I was facing 91 years. Thankfully, Judge Contreras gave me 7 1/4, and I'm thankful for that, because it could have been even longer away from my family, my daughter. So that's why this gift of a pardon, this grace for a new life, it's so important to me, and it's one I'll always be thankful for.
Okay, there's a lot. We've run out of time again. This is a gripping interview, a lot of information. And Kyle, we run out of time for this segment, and we'll come back and we'll talk about the human toll that it's taken on you and your family. So we'll be back in the next segment.